Hey everyone, it's Jack, and today I'm going to take a look at Hyprland. Hyprland is a Wayland compositor based on WL roots, and it offers all kinds of cool features like smooth animations, rounded corners on windows, and all kinds of other cool stuff that I want to explore. I'm out at the Hyprland GitHub website. They have all the source code and everything, so you could actually build this from scratch if you want, or you can install it from a repo. I think that's actually recommended if you're on Arch Linux, and so they recommend installing it directly from the AUR from the repo. And then here it's got a ton of really cool features, plugin support, and it's got the blur effects and drop shadows and all kinds of really nice effects that you can find in Wayland. And then even has a gallery down below with pictures, but tons of features. Window managers aren't something that I normally review because I'm not overly familiar with them, but since I was using DTOS in my last review, I've really kind of warmed up to it. And DT's script there, DTOS from DistroTube, really has kind of got me more curious about testing out different window managers and these different tiling managers. They actually seem to be kind of fun. So maybe I'm starting to erase that attitude a little bit towards driving a Yugo versus a Mercedes. So it really looks like a cool compositor, but I'm not going to really install it here because to install it right from source or from the repo, you got to make sure that you're using a display manager that's compatible with it, like SDDM or GDM. And those are likely what you would be using if you're running GNOME or KDE Plasma. But if you're on XFCE or some other desktop, you may not be using those display managers. So then it takes a lot more work to kind of get all that in there. And then you get a basic config. So I thought, why not just go with a distro that's already featuring Hyprland? And that distro is ArcoLinux. So that's what I'm going to use to actually showcase this. And here's the wiki, by the way. This is the Hyprland wiki. And the Hyprland wiki, I had noticed also that it's really super detailed. They got all kinds of stuff in there. I really like the wiki. It's super helpful. And this is a very hyperactive development team here. So they're just on this all the time. So this is really great. It's just getting better all the time, and really love the activity with this. So definitely something I want to explore. So now I'm out here at the ArcoLinux B website because we want to do an Arco B. That'll give us a live image right from the get-go. And so I think that would be great to have a Hyprland install right from the beginning. So I'm just going to go in here, and here at the ArcoLinux B website, I'm going to click on the downloads link, and then we'll just scroll down to the Arco B. There's the B ISOs. So I think SourceForge will work. So we'll go in here, and then here it's got all these different desktops all listed out really nice. And of course, I'm going to go with the Hyprland. And then after that, it's going to start downloading, and then I'm going to load it in, and I'll be right back. Okay, and here I am. We are booted into our boot screen. And so this ISO should load right in, and we should get a live environment here. And then we'll install this baby and just kind of see how it works. So one thing is also, I'm going to be installing this on live hardware because I've noticed in my experimentation here lately that whenever I try a Wayland, like using Sway or Wayfire or any of this stuff, none of it seems to work in a virtual machine. So yeah, not getting any results there. And ArcoLinux the same way, I can't install it or anything in a virtual machine. So why not go real hardware? A lot of times it doesn't really make any difference, but apparently with these kind of things, it does. So now we got a dark screen. That means we're getting into our environment. And there's my arrow. So any second now, we should be seeing something. There we go. Cool. So here's our welcome screen. And I guess I'm just going to go in here and just maybe jump straight into the installer. I'm going to go with the easy install. The advanced installation is good if you want to install all the different hardware, software, and different things like that. But it's really kind of complicated. So I'm just going to go with this, and then just hit next and next, all these defaults. And then here I'm just going to type in my username and then go with the password. Then we'll select the use the same password for administrator account. So I'll just click that right here. And then that way I don't have to do it twice, and we'll hit next. And then we got a summary of everything we got to do. So here it's going to create a new partition, ext4 and so forth. So I'm going to hit install now and let that do its thing. So we'll just let it kind of do its thing here. And then when it's all done, we'll reboot and see how it went. Okay, and it's all done. That didn't take too long. So the restart now is good. And I'm just going to hit done here. And then we'll just restart this baby and see what happens. Okay, and here we are. We're at our boot screen. So it looks like everything went fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and log in here. And with luck, it's going to work. And we'll see what everything looks like. So there's our Waybar up there again. And that's appeared. And so now I'm thinking a background should also appear. And there's our welcome screen. So cool. Looks like everything's good. Up here we got our Waybar, and it shows our desktop up there, 1 and 2. And again, I'm not super familiar with all this stuff, but let's start with the welcome screen. So let's go with the update Linux mirrors here, and we'll just kind of like get the updated stuff out of the way real quick. Kind of let that run a little bit in the background. So now you can see it updated. That didn't take long at all. Now let's try a keyboard shortcut. So I'm just going to select Super Enter, and that should bring up our terminal. And there we go. So that's our, I think they said that has a kitty terminal in it here. So cool. And just going to run this update here real quick. Since we updated our mirrors, we'll kind of let that do its thing, and I'll just select Enter for yes. And we're on our way. So we'll get that out of the way. But that kind of gave me a chance to kind of get a look at the feel. And you can see here that we got rounded corners, looks really nice. And when the terminal came up too, it had a nice smooth animation coming in. So here I hit Super 2, and that put us on our second desktop or space here. And I'm not sure what I clicked there on the Waybar, but I brought something up there. And so these are our different things here. And so here, those are our analog stereo. Those are our volume settings here. So when I roll my mouse wheel here, you can see it changing. And then I right clicked on it and it opened up this stuff. So here's all our settings. So that's kind of nice. Easy access just with a right click. You got all our features here. Like to see that. And then I just press Super Q to close that. And I'm still not real up on my keyboard shortcuts. Wow, so that brings up a cheat sheet. So clicking on that little globe icon there brought up this cheat sheet. So we can kind of see our keyboard shortcuts. This is cool. So there is like Super F1 is our browser. Got to remember that. And then here it shows the location of our configuration. So we'll have to take a look at that. Got config/hyper there. And then it's probably hyprland.conf. Nice. All right. So I'm liking it. It's off to a good start. So Super Q again to close it. And then there's our calendars. That's our next thing in line here on the Waybar. And then finally over here, we got our power strip. So nice. I'll just cancel that, but beautiful power strip. And I'm loving those effects, the fade in and fade out and all that. And so back to our first desktop, and I also did a Super 1, the number 1 to get to the first one. And you can just go 1 through 9, which corresponds to each workspace or desktop. And so here I'm back in the terminal here. And so let's take a look at that config. I'm just going to kind of do a nano .config/hypr, I think it was, let's go with hyprland.conf. I believe that's a conf file name. And there we are. Cool. So here's our config. So let's check this out. Wow, it looks really easy to read here. Here we got our variables. So we got main mod, which is our super key variable, our variable for the super key. And so all these variables, those are kind of handy. I'm going to remember main mod there. So let's see, let's try tiling some windows here. I just pressed Super D, and that brought up our little menu here, and we're gonna bring up Firefox and just kind of open that up. Cool, so we can play around a little bit with these key things here. So I'm gonna try like moving this over to the next desktop. And so I just did Super Shift 2, and then that pushed it over to desktop 2. So now we got it all by itself over here. That's kind of cool. And now I'm back on desktop 1, and I also opened up the cheat sheet here. And then I just closed Firefox. So yeah, the tiling stuff looks pretty cool. I like it. And so back over here, I really like how that slides over the animation again, sliding from 1 to 2 there. And so back in our config, I opened up my cheat sheet over there, so that's kind of handy. But if we scroll down through our config file, another thing I noticed that's really cool is that your config dynamically updates. So when you make a change on here and you save it, it automatically refreshes and you can see your changes, which I think is really cool. Here's our blur settings. So just to show you an example, if I go down here and let's say I want to maybe change our blur. So I'm just going to arrow up here and then scroll over and change yes to no. And that should remove the blur in the background. So now I'm going to press Control S to save it. And now you can see the blur is gone. You can see the background image showing through now from our wallpaper. Change it back to yes, Control S, and we got our blur back. So instant feedback on all our changes. I think that is really cool. So another great thing, rounding here, I could beef that up to 12, and then our corners become even more rounded here. Cool. Or I can make it really small, and then it's almost square there with a 1. Cool. And then, of course, the 6 was the default, I think. So I'm going to go with that. But I really like that, the instant feedback here. And this is a very easy to read config file, which I'm really liking too. It's got gesture settings, and then here's all these different keyboard bindings here that you can put in. So that looks kind of fun to mess with too. So if I want to install some software like say Inkscape, I could actually bind it to a keyboard binding here and just make it something like Super I or something. So I might actually do that so we can just kind of see that in action. Another cool thing is the full screen feature. So the focus window, if I press Super F, it'll go into full screen like this. That's cool. Super F again, and it'll shrink back down. So Super F, that'll kind of toggle the full screen on and off. And I think I just closed it. I pressed Super Q. I don't know why I keep doing that, but there's a nice background there. It looks like our variety here is changing. So we got variety for our desktop, for our wallpaper switcher. I like that. And I'm going to open our cheat sheet back up because I kind of closed everything. And so here, our browser is Super F1. I kind of forgot what that was. So I want to open my browser, and I'm on this second desktop right now. I use Super number 2, and then Super F1 worked just beautifully. So now we got our browser open. Beautiful. And then we can select our desktop, and there's our animation again. So desktop 1 is blank, so I can just open my terminal here. And then if I go back here and I move this over, I can press Super Shift 1 and it'll push it over there. And now I should have them both open over here. And so now we got them tiled again side by side. Nice. Now I'm going to press Super Shift Enter, and that'll open my Thunar file manager. And so now we got 3 here. Nice. And then if I press Super M, it'll kind of just move the focus window over like that. All right. Okay. Right now I'm pushing Super right click. So Super key and then right click, and then I can just kind of drag and resize the divider here, which is cool. And then Super left click will push it over to the left side. So if I click on a right window focused on the right hand side, it can push it to the left. Now you can't push it from the left side to the right. So if I Super left click, won't push it over there, but you can go from right to left. So that's what you want to remember, is it goes in one direction. So super left click, but that way it won't go that way, if that makes sense. So you push your windows right to left with the super key and then the left click mouse there. So that's kind of how that works. Nice. And so I'm going to Control F here and that'll full screen it, and I can do the same in any of these windows, Control F, and it goes full screen. So all kinds of ways you can do this. And for you people that are really seasoned in window managers, that's something you didn't already know, but for me, it's kind of cool. And so now I'm just kind of switching layouts here. Here we got the master and then the Dwindle layout. And then back to master again. So some subtle differences between the master and the Dwindle layout here. So I'm switching that using the super and space key together. And so that's kind of how you toggle between the layouts there. And then I just press super D to bring up my menu again. And so this is like the smaller menu. You can also use super shift D to get like a fuller screen menu. So I'm going to go up here and let's install something. So I'm going to do a sudo pacman. Let me just magnify that a bit real quick. Pacman hyphen uppercase S Inkscape. So we'll just install Inkscape, the old standby here. And then I'll just hit yes. And let that install. And now that we got Inkscape installed, if I bring up our menu again, we ought to be able to find Inkscape in here. So I'm just going to type that in. And there it is, cool and groovy. So I'm just going to save that config and hit thanks. And let's just open this up just to make sure it's working. I'll just select this 720p template here. And there it is. And it's tiled over here. Nice. And I can push that over to the other desktop if I want, or just Control or Super F like that. And then it's full screen. Nice. So let's quit that. And now let's attach a key binding to that. So I just up arrowed and went back into my Nano to edit the config. And I'm just going to close out of these other two windows here using the Super Q. Whoops, that was Super D. So I'm going to close out using Super Q, and then we'll close Firefox as well, and we'll just kind of make this full screen. Actually, why don't I just push the terminal over to the next desktop? So Super Shift 2, and then it put one over here, and our cheat sheet was still there, so that's cool. All right, so let me scroll down here where the key bindings are, and let's just make it like Super I. Main mod, that's our variable for super key, I think. So if I scroll down here and then just kind of pick a spot here, just above variety. That looks like a good spot, easy to remember. So I'm going to go in here and type in kind of what I see down there. So first of all, I'm going to put a comment in here and just call it Inkscape so I can remember what that's for. And then let me type in bind, and then that variable, which was equals main mod, I think is what it was called. Let me just double check. Yeah, main mod. So main mod is the variable for the super key. So I'll scroll back down. And so I'm going to type in the $ main mod with an uppercase M for mod. And then I, that's going to be our key binding. So when we press the letter I with our super key, and then exec to execute it as an application, and then separate again with a comma. And then the last thing we want to put in here is Inkscape, which is the name of the app that we want to launch. So now main mod is super key, and then I, and then it will execute Inkscape. So I just pressed Control S to save that, and it should have dynamically updated. So now if I press Super I, there we go. It worked. Wow. That's awesome. So instant feedback again. Right after I saved it, it was instantly available. The keystroke, the key binding. So there we go. Open it up and added in our first key binding using the Hyprland config. That's cool. I like that. This is actually quite fun. So got that open. I just pressed Super F to make that full screen. And looking good. All right. So I'm going to quit out of there. And so that's our Nano editor here in our terminal, which I'm just going to exit out of that. Conf, editing. And here's Super D, but if I do Super Shift D, then we get the bigger version. Nice. And let me open my cheat sheet again, because I want to refer to this. This cheat sheet shortcut is pretty handy. I like that. So here we got Super Shift D. So that's our app menu. That's the Wofi large. And then just Super D is our Wofi small. So that's how you can kind of take your pick between whether you want a bigger one or a small one. I actually kind of like the big one. That's really nice and easy to see. And so you can just pop that up and then just immediately start typing if you want to just specify a specific app. And we also got Wofi there. Cool. And I'm not sure what that is. Must be Wofi's not installed, maybe? Which would kind of make sense since Wofi is on there for Wayland. So switching back to desktop 1, and here's desktop 2. Then we can go to 3, so that's Super 3. And we could just go right down the line, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9. So every time you hit those numbers, it just kind of shows up here in your indicator up in the upper left corner there. So now I'm back on desktop 3. And so from here, I could open my cheat sheet and just kind of keep that on desktop 3 if I want. And so this cheat sheet really kind of helps get me started on the basics. And of course, you can always look at the config file too to see all the different key bindings that are noted in there. And it's a great way to learn too. Just kind of looking over that config and seeing how it's laid out. There's our Pamac manager. So that's Control-Alt-P. Excellent. So that's how you get to your Pamac shortcut. And it worked. Control-Alt-P, and there it is. So this is our Pamac package manager. I just did Super F to full screen it. And right here are all your different, forgot what it called, the groups. So you can find things by groups, and if you want to install different desktops, groups is kind of a nice, convenient way. But typically I like going with the categories. But as you can see in the groups, you got like Budgie and Cinnamon and Deepin. So it's kind of a nice, convenient way to select desktops, among other things. But especially for desktops, I find it kind of handy. And these are all kinds of Deepin extras if you're into Deepin. Cool. So back to categories. So this is kind of where we normally would go here. And so we can choose our different apps here, music apps, productivity, and so forth. And you can see all kinds of featured stuff here. And of course, you can hit the search icon up here in the upper left corner and actually do a search like for something specific like Blender. And there it is. I might as well install it while I'm at it. And authenticate. And then I guess we're good with the extra dependencies. Just kind of get those in there. And that's all good. We'll hit apply. And we'll get all that installed. And sliding over to desktop 2 and 1. Trying to remember what all we got there. So I'm clearing out Firefox there. And then I'm going to close this, I think, with the Super Q. And so now we're back. And then on the third desktop, here we got our cheat sheet again. So easy to just kind of switch back and forth. Really nice to navigate. So I'm liking that too. So I think I'll close that, Super Q. And then back over to desktop 1. Our Blender is all installed. Cool. So now if I Super Shift D, it'll open our bigger Wofi, Wofi large. And let's see where Blender is. So there it is. It's way over towards the end, but if I type it, it's just quicker to get to it. So there's Blender. And it installed just fine. So our Pamac seems to be working great. So I'm going to close that. Let's come over and click our variety there, and it gives us a random wallpaper, and that's kind of cool, a melting Rubik's Cube. I like that. So I think that's cool that the variety is installed on here by default as well. And so back in our menu, this is just Super D. Let's see HTOP, and no HTOP access from there, but I thought I saw HTOP on here, actually. I think there's actually a key binding for it too, but let me just type it from the terminal. There we go. And wow, that's great resources. So we're looking at about 521 megs, 522, give or take, for our memory. And for somebody that's used to working in desktops, that's pretty impressive. I like that. Wow, 521. So very friendly on resources. And that's even after popping around. So here's our info. We got our desktop environment is Hyprland using the Sway window manager. Got the dark theme. Running Kitty as our terminal. Very cool. So yes, the Sway window manager is what this is based on. And I've played a little bit around with Sway. Not very much, but just kind of messed with it a little bit, and it's actually quite nice. So I think having Sway along with the Hyprland compositor here is really just a very cool combination. So I just pressed Super Shift Enter again to open up our file manager. And yeah, I still can't get over the animations in here. So cool. So I'm just going to kind of, forgot I got to go from right to left. So super left click mouse, and then it'll flick over to the left, and super right click lets me just kind of tweak it, and I can expand the window a little bit or slide it. So those are all the little coolness things that I can think of right at the moment. And so as somebody that's a little bit of a newbie still, but thanks to DTOS, I'm brave enough to try some of this other stuff and actually do it on video, even if I am embarrassing myself a tad. So Hyprland OS, I guess I'm going to give my 2 cents about it now, because I know that I only touched the very tip of the iceberg with probably all the features that are available and all the little technical things. However, as a desktop user and not somebody that kind of messes with this kind of stuff that often, I gotta tell you, I am super impressed. This is really cool. This is another one of those things that I could actually probably get used to in time, adjusting to a window manager. And I'm actually kind of finding it kind of fun to use all the different keyboard bindings and so forth. And I don't think I'm quite ready to cut the umbilical cord with DTOS yet when it comes to window managers, because for me, that's still like the friendliest one to kind of learn on, because I've been kind of studying that config file a little bit and getting to know it a little better. And the next thing I'm probably going to do is put a polybar on it. Just to kind of switch it out with the Xmobar. But anyways, back to Hyprland. So I am so impressed with this thing, and I think it's built in C or C++. I don't recall, but I think it's a C-based language here. And so the way it's done, it's really fast, it's responsive. The animations are just incredible. I've never really seen a compositor, or in this case, we got our desktop environment, a Hyprland desktop environment with the Sway window manager. And what a cool combination. And I don't know if anyone else is doing this other than the ArcoLinux team there, but I haven't really looked either. But with the animation, the whole thing just feels so smooth when I run it. There's no jitter or anything like that. Everything is just lightning fast, smoothness all the way, and very easy. I think the config file is very user-friendly, and I still can't get over the fact that it just dynamically updates every time you save it, and then it just refreshes your window manager or Hyprland or whatever. It reloads it, and I think that's cool too, so I don't even have to press a Super Shift R or something like that to reload. It just does it automatically. And so that's another thing I think is really cool. And the rounded corners for that modern look. So Hyprland, wow, you are absolutely a double thumbs up. For sure. So I really like this. This is something cool. I'm going to keep exploring with it. And if you like playing with stuff like this and messing with configs and experimenting with window managers, download the ISO of ArcoLinux. Or if you're really brave and you really know what you're doing, you could just install it from Git and just really start from the beginning. Those are for the experts. But for me, I kind of like using ArcoLinux to evaluate this. And if you want to try the same thing, just put it on a USB stick and stick it on a laptop that you're maybe not using and just play with it. I think you might have a lot of fun. Great way to kill a weekend. So with that, and I hope this first look was helpful. And if it was, don't forget to leave that thumbs up and hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.